This elegant 1759 colonial mansion was built for John Vassall Jr., a wealthy loyalist whose money came from plantations in Jamaica. He fled from the house in 1774. It became George Washington's headquarters during the Siege of Boston, but later became the home of America's most popular poet in the 19th century, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Hello, my name is Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I'm the Smith Professor of Modern Languages at Harvard College. Welcome to my home. This is my study, the room where I write most of my poetry. In fact, this is my writing desk. I've written many interesting poems here, including a few which, if you don't mind my saying so, have become fairly famous. One time as I was standing at this desk, I was trying to think up a new poem, and I very quickly turned to the fireplace, and then my eyes came back to my piece of paper, and that's when it hit me that poetry is like an arrow. And so I wrote a poem called The Arrow and the Song. I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth I knew not where, for so swiftly did it fly, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth I knew not where, for who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend.
When General Washington arrived in Cambridge in July 1775, the British troops had control of Boston, and this is what was known as the Siege of Boston that took place from July 1775 through March of 1776. What was the general doing here in this Loyalist mansion in Cambridge across the river? This became his headquarters. So Martha Washington arrived on December 11, 1775 and spent 4 months in this house. This house then became not just headquarters for the general and his officers, it became a home. People are often curious about how Henry Longfellow came to live in this house in Cambridge. Longfellow was beginning his career at Harvard in 1836. By 1837, he decided he wanted some nice accommodations. He knew that the lady who owned this property was renting rooms to Harvard professors. Her name was Mrs. Craigie, and her husband was one of George Washington's generals. So Longfellow walked down the street and knocked on her door one afternoon to see if she would let him rent a couple of rooms. She turned him down initially because she said she didn't rent to Harvard students, and he assured her that he was Professor Longfellow, the Smith Professor of Modern Languages at Harvard. And so Mrs. Craigie rented him 2 rooms, the one in which I'm standing and one behind it. And she told him further that she was going to let him rent the rooms that General Washington had occupied.
Finally, in 1843, Fanny finally decided that she would marry Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and they were a perfect match. And one very funny thing that Fanny wrote to her brother when she was engaged, because everybody was surprised when Fanny became engaged. She said, "The heart does not reveal, even to itself, the gradual filling of its fountains. But a time arrives at last when the stone must be thrust aside which has sealed them up, and they gush forth, wondering at their own abundance." So this was her explanation as to why she finally became engaged, because she finally discovered that in fact she did love Henry, and they were the perfect match, perfect intellectual match. As I've already mentioned, they loved sharing literature together and languages, foreign languages, so they were rarely apart, and they would spend their evenings together reading and discussing together here in this house.
There's just no end to what you can find out about the topics here at the house. We have about 650,000 or 700,000 documents in the archives that range from the 17th century to the early 20th century. And they cover the gamut of world happenings throughout that time, from pre-revolutionary, a lot about the Revolutionary War, up until the early 20th century, social movements, communism, peace movement, Sacco and Vanzetti, and topics like that. In the house, we also have about 25,000 objects of decorative arts, fine arts, utilitarian objects, and things that the family used every day, children's toys, their family clothing, all kinds of things that they used. And for much of it, we have documentation to go along with it, which really makes it a wonderful, valuable collection. And we invite you to come to this house to see what's here. Although it is the most American of houses, it has the most internationalist collection and feeling that any house could ever have. And there's something here for everyone.
Longfellow and his wife and children lived in this house for many years, and the family owned it until 1972, when they gave the house and all its contents to the people of the United States, and it became part of the national park system.